Hi everyone in YouTube land, hope you're all keeping well. Alan here again with Physical Media Lives. This is what I call a video born of inspiration. Uh, that's pretty much the way I'm going to do a lot of my videos. I have no set plan, just if an idea hits me and I'm inspired by it then, and if I have the time, I just sit down and record and we'll see what happens. So hopefully you'll enjoy this one. This video is basically my Hammer horror journey. Basically, I've been a Hammer horror fan since childhood. Uh, always have been, always will be. And received sort of an inspiration to do a video last week when I received the following: Hammer's latest deluxe collector's edition, The Curse of Frankenstein. Uh, we're near the end of the year now, and I can safely say it's going to take a lot for this to be beaten as my release of the year. It's only my own personal opinion, of course, but it is an absolute cracking release. I'm not going to do an unboxing because there's a lot to do with that. What I'm going to do is suggest you head over to my good friend John Perry's channel, Mondo Chelivic Movies. His channel details are in my channel description. John has done really one of the best unboxings I've seen of that release, and has a lot to say about all things Hammer as well too, which is always a good subject matter. So definitely worth heading over there to have a look at that. So John really was a direct inspiration for me to do this video. Also, my good friend Steve Court, who helped me get a hold of that release, because some of you may not know, Hammer only had the UK rights to distribute that particular title. And unfortunately, that doesn't include Ireland, or fortunately, depending on your point of view. But Steve was a great help and managed to get it to me, so I'm eternally grateful to him for that, because it's one of my favourite Hammer films. So glad to have it in the collection now. So many thanks to you, Steve. Also, looking back over some of the channels that I subscribed to, I rewatched recently my good friend Keith over at Euphoria Pictures last year, I think it was. I sent him his Hammer starter pack, so to speak, to see if we get him started in a Hammer journey. I'm sure Keith will freely admit himself he's never going to be as passionate about these as maybe the likes of myself and John and Steve are, but nonetheless, he did seem to get great enjoyment from the films that I sent him. I kept it nice and simple. If you're getting introduced to Hammer, then I always think stick with the staples, Dracula, Frankenstein, and Curse the Werewolf. You can't go too far wrong. And we got him started on a journey, so he's a wee bit of a fan now, I'm glad to say, and that's really the whole point of being part of this YouTube community is, spreading the love and passion that you have for certain movies and it coming the opposite way to you. So certainly Keith, John and Steve, and the time I've known them, have certainly influenced stuff that I've gone out and purchased for my collection and got enjoyment for. So good on you lads, much appreciated, and hope you enjoy this video. So really, people like me of a certain generation, I'm 60 now, and I just pause for a minute because I know some of you will be stepping back in amazement and how can a 60-year-old look that young, but hey, there you go. It's across the bear, but I'll happily bear it. Uh, some of you probably think I look 100, but never mind. Yeah, it started really when I was a young kid in the early to mid 70s. There used to be horror double bills on BBC Two on Saturday nights, usually comprising a Universal horror film, which I also have a great love for and probably will do a video about at some stage as well, and a Hammer film. That was generally the form which they rarely deviated from. So happy times watching with my brother and my dad these films on late on a Saturday night, because we weren't at school on Sunday, we were allowed to stay up late, so I got massive enjoyment from them, and it's something that's never really left me over the years. I am very nostalgic about films and always associate them with the people that I've watched them with along the way. I make no apology for that. That's a lot like music, that's who I am. So that's partly why this video has come together, I guess. So yeah, there were great times watching those movies, and I always remember as a kid when we went to Dublin City Centre, there was a massive newsstand in the main street in Dublin, O'Connell Street, and always had these wonderfully colourful horror magazines on the stand that I always used to fill me with sense of wonderment. When I got a wee bit older, Dad would often give me an advance on the pocket money maybe to buy one, and I read many of those over the years. So Hammer's a strange sort of entity in that like many of the characters in their films, there's many times they've been written off and you think they're gone forever, but they always find a way to come back. There's no substitute for class at the end of the day. Like, they are really, really excellent films, built around the pillars of Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, obviously, but that wouldn't be fair to just put them as the main components of the success that Hammer had. They were a large part of it, obviously, but many great actors like the likes of Oliver Reed got a start in Hammer, Francis Matthews, Mary Shelley, lots of them. Um, so, really, really is a big part of my life, and I think they always continue to will be because they're just great films, as simple as that. Uh, I know a lot of people share that passion with me. I've already mentioned John over at Monmouth Televic Movies. I know Nigel Rock God 2004 as a massive fan like myself and would have seen those double bills as well too. So as I said, nothing wrong with nostalgia. Like, if they're good films and you still like them years later, it means they're really good. So that's what it's all about to me. So what we'll talk about really is the Hammer miracle that they managed to ever get into the horror movie business. In fairness, as 4K collectors, last year was a big year in that they entered the 4K market, and I'm sure a lot of us would have thought that was never going to happen because they always seem to fight against the odds. Like the film I've shown you here, Curse of Frankenstein, really was a miracle this film got made at all because the censors were really on their backs and fighting them at every turn, but through a combination of ingenuity and determination, they managed to get it through and get it made. But even making the film had its own issues because Universal had given them the rights to Frankenstein, but under very strict guidelines. So there was absolutely no way that the monster could look anything like the Karloff iteration from the 30s. Couldn't be anything similar at all. The monster couldn't move the same way. Basically, they were told they couldn't copy anything at all that was in the original Frankenstein movies, and to that point, they actually had their legal team hovering in the background, ready to jump on them should anything be seen as inappropriate. So Hammer did a very clever thing, in my opinion. The Karloff films from the 30s were always primarily about the creature. Hammer decided to reverse that and make them all about Baron Frankenstein, as he was in these films, played by the great Peter Cushing. And this was an inspired choice. It proved a major breakout role for Peter Cushing, made him a massive star overnight, literally, having worked in TV and theatre for many years. This really was his breakout role, and boy, he really grasped it with both hands. I mean, if you haven't got the 4K edition of Curse of Frankenstein, I have to say it's one of the best transfers of an older film I've seen. 70-year-old film that looks in pristine condition, and he really gives an epic performance. People tend not to regard Christopher Lee's performance as the creature in the same league as Karloff, which I guess is fair enough, but there were so many restrictions on Christopher, like the makeup couldn't be the same, he couldn't walk the same, he couldn't look anything like the same, so he was quite restricted in that. He recovered pretty well from it because within a year uh, he'd been cast in the Dracula film, and that's ironically when relations with Universal became excellent because Universal had the rights to distribute the film in the US, and it's well documented at this stage that the success of the Dracula film saved Universal from going into bankruptcy. So the relationship was greatly improved after. Fantastic film, well worth buying if you haven't got it. People say it's a little bit pricey. I understand that. Like in the UK, it's about £60. In Ireland, a little over €70. What I would say is, though, if you compare it, say, to a Universal Collector's Edition or Warner Brothers or Second Sight or something like that, they generally go for about £50, €60 as well. But you've got maybe a 2 disc set at the most. The Curse of Frankenstein set has got 6 discs in it, and absolutely laden down with special features. As I said, the 4K transfer is incredible. The movie itself is just a fantastic movie. You've got a selection of aspect ratios, with lots of great special features on it. One that I really enjoyed was on disc 6. There's a 2.5 hour documentary called Flesh and Blood rather, narrated by the great Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing themselves. It's a great watch, basically a whole history of the Hammer horror franchise as such. Great watch. There's also behind the scenes footage of the two of the guys interacting together. It was the last thing that Peter Cushing did for Hammer. Sadly, he passed away not long after that. But I always, with movies, talk about what I call the immortality concept, in that two great actors like that, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, live on forever because their work is there to be seen. And thanks to Hammer doing all the 4K stuff, it'll be in pristine nick for many, many years to come. So that's something I always love about being a movie fan, that they may be gone physically, but these guys live on forever for me and maybe potential uh, future generations of my family to watch. And I'm sure they will. Most of my family like the films because they've got good taste, but obviously they had made in me. Anyway, some of you out there may be always have an interest in delving into Hammer, but are a little bit reluctant. You don't know where to start because it's such a wide portfolio. Understand that completely. So I do have a couple of recommendations for you. Um, if you want to go down the route of not spending too much money, uh, this guy is still readily available out there. It's a DVD box set. There's about 21 movies in it. It can be picked up quite cheap in some places. You don't just have to rely on eBay. Some of the well-known websites like Zavvi and Amazon still have it at times, and usually at a very good price. 21 films right across the whole Hammer spectrum. Some great titles in there. Some of the Dracula films are there. Some of the Frankenstein films are there. Some of the Mummy films are there. You're well covered. One film that I think never gets mentioned much in the Hammer portfolio is a film called The Nanny with the great Betty Davis in the lead role. Man, is she scary as hell. She's one nanny you don't want looking after your kids. That's all I can say. So really terrific film. Uh, but lots of good films in there. Now, as a Hammer fan, I do have to hold my hand up. Sometimes I think I'm guilty of saying, these guys are fantastic. They made some of the greatest films of all time. They did make some absolutely wonderful films, absolutely no doubt about that. I think they would freely admit themselves by the time it got to the early to mid 70s, they had started to lose their way a little bit. A lot of the writers they've worked with in the past had either passed away or moved on to different projects, as the same with directors or whatever. So they were kind of stuck in a little bit of a rush, not really sure what way to go or whatever. And, sort of disappeared in the mid to late 70s. They had a brief foray into television with a series called Hammer House of Horror, which I'd highly recommend. That's available in a Blu-ray box set, about 12 episodes, I think. Really not overly expensive. Peter Cushing, as always, turns up. Doesn't he always with Hammer, but really uh, terrific series, well worth the watch. Good Halloween entertainment, even though it was just passes by, but Halloween all year round as far as I'm concerned. You can watch horror films anytime. You don't have to wait just for Halloween, but well worth getting. They just lost their way. A lot of the stuff they did in the early to mid 70s would almost be classed as soft porn. The odd little gem would come through, but by that stage they had lost their way a little bit. An over reliance on Dracula and Frankenstein, maybe. They probably made too many of those films, and quality certainly started to drop. This is nothing new, to be honest with you. If you look at the modern day movie scenario, you could level the same accusation at the MCU, for example, like blasting out films left, right, and centre for a long time, and the quality dropping considerably. Franchises like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Final Destination, whatever. There was a time a trilogy was the done thing, but now 6, 7, 8 installments more sometimes, and it's only logical that the quality will start to drop. So these are just commonplace mistakes that will happen, when you're talking about a business, which, let's be honest, we all like to think of movies as an art form, which is what they are, but they are a business as well, and they're there to make money, so they'll wring every last bit out of it, particularly in the present day. We don't have a studio system anymore. Movie studios are owned by multi-million-dollar corporations. They just want to see the dollars coming in, so they don't care how they do it. Probably one of the main reasons why cinemas tend to struggle so much these days. The films are not out that long anymore. They just want to get them on physical media or onto streaming services and just get the money rolling in whatever way possible. So maybe it will change in the future. One would hope so. I think the last year or so I've seen a lot of really good horror films hit the cinemas. Recently I saw Guillermo del Toro's new Frankenstein, which I think is an absolutely phenomenally good movie. Had a brilliant time at it. We've had Sinners, the likes of Weapons or whatever. Probably in the last year, I've gone to cinema maybe 300% more than I have done in the past. That's surely a sign that more quality films are starting to come out. We all love our physical media, but there are certain films that just need to be seen in their proper context on a big screen in the cinema, and enjoy your physical media copy of it afterwards with all the extras attached, etc. Whatever. But that's maybe a sign, as I said, cinema will start to come back a little. There is a tendency now as well to re-release films on significant anniversaries, like Jaws at the 50th anniversary. Would love to see the original Omen come back to cinemas next year to celebrate its 50th anniversary. Yep, I know, that's a scary thought, isn't it? And hopefully we'd see a very special 50th anniversary release as well too. So maybe that's the way forward for cinemas. Like, there is a nostalgia for older films, and if they are re-released in the cinema, there is maybe an older customer base that would be willing to go back and see them. I certainly would anyway. So we shall see what the future holds. I've shown you the DVD box set. Most of the classic horror films from Hammer are still quite freely available on the Blu-ray format and at very reasonable prices. So I mean, you'll pick up the likes of the Dracula from 1958. You pick that up on Blu-ray at a very reasonable price, and most of the websites. One of my particular favourites, Curse of the Werewolf with Oliver Reed. That's reasonably priced as well. This is one of my favourite items in my collection. It's actually my favourite Hammer film, always has been. Dracula Prince of Darkness, which is the proper real sequel to Dracula from 1958. There was a sequel before that called Brides of Dracula, but Christopher Lee's not in it and Dracula's not in it, so a very misleading title. Not a bad film in its own right, but Dracula Prince of Darkness always works for me. It does break the formula where Peter Cushing's not actually in it, but there is an actor called Andrew Kerr, Scottish actor, who plays a priest in it, who basically takes over the Van Helsing sort of role. He's absolutely excellent in it. One of those few films as well, possibly the only one in history, where the lead actor Christopher Lee doesn't speak. Depending on what version of events you believe, Christopher Lee has said that he didn't want to speak any of the dialogue he was given because it wasn't up to scratch, so he just said he played the part as a silent film. The writer, Jimmy Sangster, said he did write dialogue, but Christopher Lee just wasn't that interested in it. Depends on their point of view. But great film nonetheless, and my absolute favourite Hammer film. Don't really know why, to be honest with you. I guess maybe watching them on TV back in the day, it was always on more frequently than the others for some reason. But I've always loved it, always will. I definitely one worth checking out. So if you do decide to venture into the world of Hammer, I wish you well. I'm sure you'll have a lot of enjoyment, hopefully as much as I have had. And once you're immersed into it and you become a fan, definitely check out the collector's editions that are coming on stream now. Like, it's a little over a year ago where are we? Captain Kronos, the Vampire Hunter, hit the shelves and the websites. Pretty much sold out now as far as I know, but there is a more basic edition of it available on the Hammer's website or on the various retailers. Definitely worth checking out. It's a film I always consider a missed opportunity with Hammer. There's definitely potential for a series of those films, but maybe by that stage the money was starting to run out and they just couldn't commit to it. Who knows? The people that know the answers to those questions sadly would no longer be with us, but Hammer still are, so that's something to be glad about. And then after that, then their next big deluxe release was the Quatermass Experiment. Really excellent sci-fi film, and I think, in my opinion, one of the first sci-fi films to install horror into it as well too. There are some pretty horrific scenes in this, so the first really high-class sci-fi horror movie, in my opinion. This was followed shortly after by Quatermass 2, which is just as good as the first one, very enjoyable. Ironically, the third Quatermass film hasn't been released yet. Hopefully it will be at some stage. But in my opinion, that's actually the best of the Quatermass films. Andrew Kerr, the actor I mentioned earlier from Dracula Prince of Darkness, takes over the lead role. In my opinion, plays the part a lot better. Not to put down the previous actor that played him, but Andrew Kerr just brings a little bit more charisma and screen presence to it. So look out for that. That is available on Blu-ray, actually on the Hammer website, as well as the various retailers, and definitely worth checking out. As I said, these were the first films that successfully blended sci-fi and horror together, in my opinion. So well worth a look. One thing I'm going to say about Hammer as well is that I've actually been in regular communication with them regarding their releases and various other issues, and they definitely do listen to feedback from their fans, and they've communicated with me on a regular basis and showed an awful lot of respect in my direction, which I'm very grateful for. They actually took the time to comment on one of the videos I posted as well too, which meant a lot to me. So I think once you know that the guys behind the releases do actually care about what you think, then it makes it all the more worthwhile to collect the stuff they bring out. Definitely, they needed to bring out one of the A-list titles this year, otherwise people were going to lose interest, but they did. They were aware of that, and that's why Curse of Frankenstein hit the stands. So I reiterate again, it's still available. It's definitely going to sell out, in my opinion, because it's such a quality release. For those of you that don't want to invest a lot of money in the big deluxe edition, I understand that there is actually a lower spec edition available, just basically the 4K and Blu-ray, which would be a lot more affordable, I guess, for some of you. So I do understand that completely. I just wanted to have this because it's a very important film to me. It's the first Hammer film I watched with my dad, so it has a special place in my heart. So glad to have it, but there is a lesser edition available. But as I said, sometimes it's just the movie that's paramount. So if that's what you want, then go get it. It's definitely well worth a look. As I said, the 4K transfer is pretty spectacular, so I'm sure you'll enjoy it, and all those great special features as well. But that is pretty much it from me, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I haven't waffled on too much. Hammer's just a real passion thing with me, so as I said, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Planning on doing one about Universal Horror as well, which I also have a great love for. Maybe you could let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in. Got a decent collection of them as well too, and they've been readily available in 4K for a while, so let me know in the comments what you think. And as I said, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for popping by, and really shall talk to you all again soon. Cheerio.